This tiny receiver is the Digitech AR1736. I got it from JCar when they were having a sale. It cost me $15, though the normal price is $25 at the time that I'm producing this video. It's a small receiver, basically pocket sized. Not only does it do AM and FM, but also shortwave frequencies as well. Its frequency range is from just below 5 MHz up to nearly 22 MHz. How well does this receiver work? Keep watching and you'll find out. The receiver uses 3 AAA batteries, has a small telescopic whip, and is push button frequency controlled. There's no tuning knob. The band switch switches between AM, a shortwave band, and FM broadcast band. Claims to be DSP. So it's possibly using one of the new chips that is becoming quite common in small portable receivers, not necessarily a superhet.
Hopefully they will.
One of our local stations. It's possibly a bit hard to tell from the camera, but I've got it at maximum volume and I'm about 40 centimetres from the radio.
How likely is it that it can be contained?
And you've got to say, the volume is not very loud.
Certainly Andrew's message
it's definitely quieter than most other portable receivers I've used.
But really,
so I think it would only be okay if you're in a very quiet room or if you're holding the radio up to your ears. Alternatively, you could just use headphones. That's one of the country stations that I sometimes use as a reference, 3CS in Colac. There's some low power stations on 87.6 and they're coming through quite well. In fact, we'll do a test later on between the stronger stations, because ideally you want to be able to tune an FM receiver off by 200 kHz and be able to hear weaker stations in between. Left and right is the tuning. As you can see on FM, it's in 100 kHz steps.
Left tap up but finish so that you can just collect your thoughts.
If you hold it down, it will scan and then stop on a busy frequency.
That's the first measure of that's
7 times 7.
As for performance, here we're tuned to a local station. If we tune 200 kHz off it, it's still there but it's dropped. So if there was another station 200 kHz away, then you'd probably still be able to hear it. And it's pretty much completely gone at 400 kHz away. There's another station here. Local stations here in Melbourne are about 800 kHz apart on FM. As for selectivity, I haven't done any detailed comparisons with other receivers, but I'd say it was pretty good. We'll just try some country stations.
I need you to hold on.
Last month, former Premier John Barilaro signed his 3-year contract to fill that job. But he only got it after an earlier process last year was scrapped at the last minute.
And here's an example where we're getting 2 stations clearly at 200 kHz spacing.
effectively halting the appointment of an accomplished female candidate who'd already been told she was getting the job. Here's a listen to some of that questioning.
Jews have the French
And there's
club,
another station, 200 kilohertz before the one I was on before. So yeah, I'd say the performance on FM is very good. It's getting a lot of stations, good sensitivity and good selectivity. Only thing is the volume isn't so good. Anyway, we'll go over to AM. It goes up to 1620, that's the highest frequency it goes, which means that there'll be some stations up above 1600, depending on where you are, that it won't pick up. It's in 9 kilohertz steps. And again, the scanning thing stops on stronger stations. Now, this is one of our strongest, in fact the strongest. And you can hear a bit of it on the next frequency down and up. Another country station, 981, I think that's 3HA in Hamilton. 891, that's Adelaide.
They haven't done it yet though, as you say, there's only another day to go.
3GG. I found it a little bit tricky to sort out the memories, but I was able to put a few in. The tuning here is in 5 kilohertz steps, which means that to tune from, say, 5 megahertz all the way up to 21 megahertz, and to tune through all that range is quite laborious. Unless you've got memories, there's no shortcuts. Now we'll just try, see if the scanning works on shortwave. Getting a station here on 9700. Which I think is Radio New Zealand. Might be able to hear something. This doesn't have a BFO, so it cannot receive SSB or CW. But you might have heard something which I think was FT8. Now there's some amateur activity, SSB. I'll now get a BFO. And there's a trace there. WWV.
Warm welcome. I'd be like, oh, this wagon is very cool though.
Warning for those people listening in the States, don't do that. The reason I'm warning you not to is as soon as you use a local dialect one time, people will be like, oh, and they'll just start throwing local dialect at you.
17710, at good strength.
Talking about.
Even in English.
I know that. I had the same problem when I first went to the States as well. As soon as you say something, they're like, oh.
Hey, what's up, dude? Oh, yeah, I'm good, man. How are you? Yeah.
Yeah, oh, and this baseball team, that baseball team, and this senator, and I was like, I know nothing. Well, yeah, sure, cool.
Yeah, that sounds nice. about phones versus laptops. And this is something I've heard from Western people trying to understand and define folks in China. Because in the United States, when I was a kid, my grandma was like, oh, computers are the future. And she bought a computer for my family. And my other, all of her grandkids' families got one really nice computer.
Go, Grandma.
An enormous amount of money. Yes, she was investing in what she thought her family. So my parents were like, what is this thing? And so my older brothers were like, dude, I'm skateboarding. And my little brother was like, I'm going to eat this Lego. So I was like, it's mine. So it wasn't really mine, but I spent 90% of the time using it because no one else had the interest. And I grew up, and then, laptops came along. I was like, okay, it's time for laptops. And then eventually phones came along. So I have a mix at home of computer, laptops and phones and stuff. The expats in China have told me that this is not the story in China, and that a lot of people did have computers, they had experienced wealth and they were able to have the same kind of trajectory. But most people went straight from no computers to
smartphones.
Really nice cell phones. Yeah, really nice cell phones. And that was their transition. They went from no computers to here's this amazing smartphone and everything you need to do is in it. And so a lot of people have like a different view of technology, or the way that they interact with technology is very, very much based around the smartphone. Would you say that that's an accurate assessment?
I think so, because I know that, well, even though there's a lot of cities, and you and I both live in big cities, there's still a large population in China that live in rural areas, and my mom's family is one of them, and they have never.
We feel your pain. So, from Monday, there's some relief for your petrol pain. Fueled by APCO 24/7, we've got you. Get pumped for Bay 93.9. 20k carpool.
One important specifications with small radios is the current consumption. Here, the Digitech is quite high, at around 50 to 55 milliamps at full volume, which, as I mentioned before, is not very loud. That's a big difference compared with older types of transistor radios that had less circuitry and a free-running oscillator, where consumption would be in the low tens of milliamps for a likely greater volume. Now I'm indoors, and here's my main station antenna. Now when I connect it to the telescopic, the radio just overloads and there's no RF gain control or attenuator. So if you are going to use this with an external antenna, then you just have the lead up to it close but not electrically connecting to the telescopic. Right now I'm listening to Radio New Zealand on 7245.
Even hours sometimes. So I mean, the second is, why would it take...
If I have the coupling too tight, then again you get overload. So I'll just move it further away. Now, what happens if you connect the outside antenna and you're listening on AM as opposed to shortwave? Well, there, it's an improvement.
We developed as a species, for example, via, as you mentioned, in protection, allowing us to be able to flex. And so that direction by government.
Yeah. So
She was up for 1 hour on her Facebook post.
Yeah.
She realised. Australia, I think there was something like 200,000 words written.
It's a mean thing to say.
And our brains are incredibly energy hungry. That in order to develop the brain, that's very important to our.
This is just incredible, the change in psyche. We used to freak out if 2 cases were on. I remember I'd be at Apollo Bay and somebody would get a case, there'd be one case in Colac, and I'd get a phone call from Melbourne saying, hey, there's a case 80 k's from you.
That's where we go.
I promise you, maybe you
reading groups have been...
We are the masters of fire. The disorder. ABC Sunshine Coast.
Melbourne and Victoria.
You've put pep in my step and a hop and skip in my gait, I must say, Emily.
Be sent in the website, you know.
It's not...
It's really interesting. I think certainly talking to a lot of the students who do my unit, for example, a lot of them have been through major bushfire events themselves. Quite a relationship.
It is that we had some lovely foreign...
Big appreciation for Afro-American culture, like music and art.
India, you know, it's similar to what we do.
So keep your head down. What? Keep your head down? I repeated to myself.
Seen Braveheart, but apparently Mel Gibson's leading his men into battle.
Purple shades on the pegs, and then teacher's pet on a loose rein now, followed by Joey.
The other song of yours called Mortal. Can you introduce for us?
And Courageous Sam.
Related.
Yeah, but Australia nearly...
Thanks for the information, mate. I just said it.
Then you can
Skip through straight.
Way back in 1932 to divert water from far north Queensland.
There's a lot more deaths from COVID, and like I say, just the sheer number of deaths we're getting. Like, I mean...
For the second, he wants to even think about a third.
Oakite, penetrant, was siphoned out of a 55-gallon drum.
Less alternative given. So I'm assuming lots of people are you feel, because I think people who can't see very well have a different reaction and a different way of consuming it. And I agree to speed up
được chăm sóc nuôi dưỡng vì nhiều lý do.
There's lots of the mountain ash forests in places like the Victorian Alps. The mountain ash are these huge.
Thank you. It is 5 to the hour. News Force weather details coming up shortly on the Super Radio Network. Don't go away. Songs are gone, yeah?
Unfortunately, if you believe in amillennialism, you're saying there is no millennium, so there is no earthly kingdom.
Race 7 coming up in 3 minutes from now. Result there for you, Redcliffe confirming 2, 1, 5 and 7.
Good talking to you tonight, because it's been quite a big day for it, but it continues, and we've still got to be vigilant, be alert but not alarmed, as it were.
Have paid $523.70, and the quantity on New South Wales.
Look like nothing's gonna come my way.
Một lần hoặc là 2 lần vào cuối tuần trong một tháng.
trading in their best prices possible on a tote wing bet. Activate the lock on the Tab app, and if the fixed odds starting price is better when your horse wins, you'll get the difference in cash.
To get to kind of all the struggles that a person's gone through.
Yep. Yeah, I really like the 3 Ds. So you can own each of these Ds.
Wednesday night lotto numbers. So go and get your pen and a bit of paper, have that handy. News coming up next. Big movies on the big screen at Fame's Twin Cinema. To run an equivalent Daffy-Doo. Plus, motion sensor activation gives it...
And entertainment with friends, you're going to love the horizon. So go on.
Most weeks, depending on the species year by year, you can get a much more detailed record. So
even with some relatively loose coupling, I'm still getting breakthrough of local AM stations at certain spots on shortwave bands. Speaking about breakthrough, another thing I'll just do as an experiment. This is a RF oscillator. It is a BFO using a 3.58 MHz ceramic resonator. It will have a lot of harmonics, but when you've got a receiver with a weak front end and you have a strong RF signal next to it, then you can get all sorts of interesting things happen. There's various mixing. Likely to be from the AM broadcast band. Signals are so strong that they get through the front end. As an example, I'm on 14.195 MHz. And you can get various stations just by applying some RF. You've heard what it sounds like. What's my overall view? For AM and FM reception, the receiver is surprisingly good. If you want something small to put in your pocket and with a digital readout, then this is not a bad receiver. Its main limitations are its very low volume. It'd be fine for listening in bed or with the radio up to your ear. But otherwise, if you're in a noisy location, then the receiver is probably not loud enough for you. On shortwave, it covers quite a wide frequency range from below 5 up to nearly 22 MHz. And I could pick up some shortwave stations just on the telescopic whip when walking around outside. But overall, shortwave is not as good as the other two bands. And it was quite difficult to tune across the band casually, but you can use the memory functions to store your favourite stations. So if you've got a strong shortwave station, preferably only a single hop array, then this receiver will receive it okay. For instance, as you heard, Radio New Zealand I could get quite well here, and even some further stations away. Overall, if you want something for shortwave, I would suggest a better receiver. So that's it. Small, portable, light. Normal price is $25, though there's a $10 off sale, so I got it for $15. So not bad value for that. And available from JCar, and I'll have a link in the description for this product, so you can order it if you want. Enjoy these videos? Want to start in amateur radio? Well, check out my books, Ham Radio Get Started for USA readers and the Australian Ham Radio Handbook for those in Australia. For more information, visit my website vk3ye.com or search their titles on Amazon.